Hi folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. I think what I'm going to tell you now is one of the most important things I can tell you about fishing, and that is I've always recommended wading is a wonderful way to enjoy fishing. Well, that isn't what I want to tell you right now, but since most of the fishing I do is I'm wading, I have to contend with a lot of the dangers that come with wading. And I wanted to tell you a story about my buddy Rust. He had called me recently, and I had mentioned here on the radio show that there have been reports of people catching really good catches of trout this time of the year out of our streams. And one in particular was the upper areas of the Grass River. And this is a place where you wouldn't think of there being really good brook trout. I wouldn't, because but it does have its origination near some real swampy land up by Tupper Lake. And so Rust called me and asked me if I wanted to go up with him. He wanted to try this section of the grass. He knew exactly where it was, and I wasn't able to. I had a lot of other things I had to do based on what we're trying to do with our fishing plans for our area, both the tournaments and the sports shows. So Rust went up alone, and he said he found the area. He parked his car, and he remembered there was a trail. Years ago, he'd fished the same area, and so he started walking up what was once a trail. He said it had all grown over, and he was bushwhacking his way upstream, and he'd gone up a long, long ways, and he saw what looked like a beautiful pool that if there was going to be brook trout in that part of the river, that looked like a place to try. So he said he had taken his fly rod and his spinning rod up, just in case one didn't work, the other might. With his spinning rod, he's using little bitty spinners and little bitty baits, and of course, his number one enjoyable way to fish is using a fly rod. So that was his plan. He said when he got to the edge of the water, he had his waders and he had cleats on the bottom of his boots, his wader boots, and I always prefer felt. But anyway, he said, so he started to fish, and he stepped out, and he said there was a big boulder that he had to step on before he could get out to where he wanted to be. And he says when his foot went on that boulder, it slid forward just like grease or slime. And he said he fell forward. He said he fell right on his face in the water. His rods both went down to the bottom of the river. And he said he hurt his wrist when he fell forward to just sort of catch his fall. And he said at the same time his ankle was wedged between a rock. And he thought after he'd fallen, did I break my leg, and how am I going to get back? And what is, he wasn't worried about the rods, which he was later able to get out of the bottom of the river. But he said he sat there for a long time trying to assess how damaged he was. And there was no cell signal in that area. And I don't know if whether he had his phone or not, but if you can't call for help, then what are you going to do? And I said, Rust, what were you planning to do? And he said, I thought if my leg isn't broken, I can probably somehow walk out of here. And if it is, maybe he says, I guess I'll just sit here till I die. And he sort of laughed, and he said, well, actually, I thought maybe I can crawl out somehow. We're talking about probably 3/4 of a mile he'd have to go through this thick brush to get back to his car. But this has always got to be on your mind if you want to wade these waters. And our waters, our rivers, our tributaries that I talk about are really treacherous wading areas. They're not like most rivers you'd find in the country. Russ said to me, he said, I waded for years out in Colorado, and it was something I enjoyed, whether I caught fish or not. I enjoyed being able to wade into different sections of the water and see all the changes that take place as you move from one direction to another. But he said, now here I am, and if I can't wade, that's really going to change my fishing. And it was very frustrating for him. Now, he's many, many years younger than me, but it's the same things we all have to consider. If you're going to wade these waters, be aware that the size of the boulders can make a tremendous difference. I talk about not wanting to snag my lure because it's almost impossible not to get snags in all these rocks. Well, it's the same thing with wading. I know when I try to wade, I even though I want to be able to see the bottom and see the size of the rocks I'm trying to get through, I step in a certain way, just moving one foot first in front of the other to try to feel how big the rocks are and whether I can, if I put my full weight on that, am I going to slide forward and fall? And it's a huge thing. But the other thing you should be aware of is never, ever leave to go fishing in one of these remote areas like I do all the time without notifying those people closest to you where you are, so people know if they don't hear from you at the time that you think you'll be back, that they'll know where to look. This is so critical. And to wear the right footwear, oh my gosh, that is so critical. I prefer felt on the bottom of the boots that I wear. But that's becoming rarer and more rare all the time because of the dangers that felt causes. Invasive species can stick on the bottom in that felt, and you wouldn't know they were there. And you can transport them to other areas and change the whole ecology of that area by wearing the wrong footwear. So even though I recommend felt, I also want you to know that waiting staff, you can say to yourself, oh, geez, I'm not at that point where I need a staff to help me walk. Well, I'll tell you, it makes a huge difference. That's the way I was. I thought, I don't want anybody to see me out there. They'll think I'm really over the hill if I've got a waiting staff. Well, now that's a vital part of what I take with me when I do wade. Because if you're using the strength of your arms, there's a tremendous amount of stability that brings to you. If you can wedge that wading staff down and use that as sort of your point of stability, it makes a tremendous difference. So will I stop waiting? No, I'm going to keep waiting as long as I possibly can, because that's the joy of my fishing. But I wanted you to know what can happen. Can happen to my buddy Rust. He's in phenomenal shape. He's climbing mountains those days that he's not fishing, and to be a skier like he is, that gives you a tremendous sense of balance. So having a sense of balance is tremendously important to keep you from falling. But I don't have that great sense of balance anymore. And it's something that I value more than I can ever tell you, is to be able to go out on these wonderful rivers and wade my way down. And usually I have it all to myself. But I have to reconsider this a bit, try to be as safe as I can for those that might care for me as well as I care for myself. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.